All right. Well, welcome back to Essentially Biased Podcast. I'm Barry with my co-host.
Kalen and Barry, what the fuck was that we did last time?
So, what he is eloquently referring to is our inaugural podcast, which, for all of those who listened to it, well, I think my co-host will agree with me that it was much like the first time. It didn't last as long as we thought it would. It wasn't as fulfilling as we thought it would. And we certainly had no clue what we were doing in the beginning, halfway through it, and even at the end.
I think that's an understatement.
I would say we were a little scatterbrained. Huh?
A little bit, but I agree with you. It was the first time.
So, well, we had left off a couple little cliffhangers there about the next episode here. So, what we were really going to get into in this episode is a number of things, but mostly like we were going to talk about like work experience, job application. You know, what is happening with today's job market? It used to be you had the experience or you had the education. You had one or the other, and you could probably walk yourself into a decent paying salary that would give you a decent living. But now it's like you have to talk to a professional about becoming a professional.
Yeah, I mean, what is it, that joke I say all the time? It's
The virgin.
Yeah, it's we're looking for a virgin, but you need 2 to 3 years of professional sexual experience.
I mean, how do you get experience from somebody who doesn't have experience? That's the whole point, right? Is the job is supposed to create that experience, and they're just supposed to have that educational background, or even vice versa. What about all those people that have the experience, but they don't have the formal education? And I will tell you now that formal education is usually anywhere between 1 to 3 years behind the experience needed to successfully function in the job market.
Oh yeah, because I mean the way academia is at this point, yeah, you're, what does you say, 1 to 5 years behind?
At least 1 to 5. I mean, I think depending on the discipline, you could have even as low as a 1 to 3 year range, but it really depends. I mean, I know when I was taking it was a business. It was like computer literacy for business or whatever. It was a class, and basically what you learned is a form of computer programming for the business world. And the first thing the instructor said, I just want to let you know that by the end of this course, you will know everything you need to know to be 4 years behind the market.
I can totally see that, because I mean, computer technology, it doubles every 6 months, something like that. Was it Moore's law, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, every 6 months, technology becomes antiquated. So,
well, I mean, you have to come in to a lot of that because of the job, right? Like, I mean, you go into a customer's home and they have a modem from 5 years ago.
What Kalen is alluding to is the fact that I work for a large telecom firm in the United States here, and so I do a lot of house calls. And yes, he's right. I mean, the average life expectancy of any modem that I run into that the company provides is anywhere between 3 to 5 years old, and it's like, think Wi-Fi. I go into customers' houses all the time, and for those of you that know what Wi-Fi stands for, a lot of people think it stands for wireless fidelity. Well,
Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
No.
Well, to be honest, that's a logical assumption to make. In fact, at this point, I think we've generally in the industry has accepted that Wi-Fi stands for wireless fidelity, when in reality, Wi-Fi doesn't mean anything. It's the name we gave wireless connection between a internet accessing device, a modem, versus router versus any other hardline connection, because we get Wi-Fi from the idea of hi-fi. Well, hi-fi is high fidelity, talking about sound. Now that is what hi-fi stands for. But you anyway, to get back to what I was originally trying to talk about, is that you come into a customer's home, go back 5 years. You know what? We probably need to even go back further. Go back about 8 years ago, when Wi-Fi was just coming into itself. It was just really starting to blossom out there. People really starting to embrace this whole Wi-Fi thing, because even then, cell phones. What, 8 years ago?
I mean, the iPhone just turned 10, right?
Yeah. So
2008, 2007 is when they first came out.
I think I had my first iPhone when I was in the Marine Corps, which I got really drunk. Imagine that, a Marine getting drunk. I know that's just, wow, that's a shocker. And not the 3-finger one either, just in general. But I actually got drunk and lost my iPhone in my barracks room. I still to this day have no idea what happened to my iPhone. But yeah, that was about 2007, 2008. So, okay, so go back 10 years. I'll go back 10 years. The iPhone probably is what ushered in the modern era of Wi-Fi, because it was the first cellular device that was really touching on the Internet of Things, the whole idea of total access to the world at your fingertips. And it was the first cell phone that was truly designed around the idea of Wi-Fi itself. So what happened is that with the proliferation of Wi-Fi devices, you only get the experience of working with Wi-Fi by being in that environment. So you have to have the job before you can ever really get the experience. I mean, you can sit in a lab all day long. I can go to our R&D guys for the company I work for and say, hey, if I do this, will this work? And they'll be like, well, let's test it in the lab. Well, we can test it in the lab and find out that, oh yeah, it absolutely will not work here. It will not work. Can't do it. Then I can take it out in the real world and I can literally make that stuff work. I don't know. Give you a prime example. I had a customer not too long ago. We use a particular type of device to route voice over IP, and our modems, as I've been told several times, and this is even in literature, that our modems, when they're put in what's called IP pass-through, will not work with this device and allow voice over IP communication. I will tell you right now, there's a customer that I left that is not only on that same piece of equipment, but he's working through IP pass-through with that device, routing faxes through voice over IP. The thing about what I'm getting at,
experience. Like, you can't have that experience before you get there.
Yeah, and I get understanding or requiring that people have a basic understanding of the skill itself, but how do you ask the virgin, or how do you sit there and say, I want a virgin with 2 to 3 years sexual experience?
Yeah,
I mean, the notion, the idea of virgin itself means no experience.
Yeah, I mean, you're asking for an impossibility. Like, job advertisers are literally asking for the impossible.
I mean, this hunting for a job in today's world is like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube wrapped inside of Enigma, covered in a puzzle in a room with no light.
I'm going to be straight up. You know how I got my job?
Did you lie?
I knew people.
Well, and maybe it's the world of networking nowadays, but, should you always have to lean on networking? Because, I mean, we all know that one person that has their job because of who they knew, not what they know. And you're always going behind them and fixing their mistakes. And it's not like you get credit for that because, one, nobody wants to call that person out. And two, if you call that person out, then you're totally, out of the norm.
Well, and then the problem is the higher up that hired them will take their side over yours.
Well, that's true because they're self-invested in that person.
Yeah. I mean, so it's like, what do we do to fix this problem? Do we have to ask hiring directors to open up, or is it a systematic problem in the system?
Well, I mean, just by saying systematic problem, you're talking about a problem in the system. So,
yeah, double talk. Hey,
I would say that you kind of have a twofold issue here. One, you have hiring managers that are taking the safest route possible they see by hiring somebody that appears to be qualified who may not actually be. Because you often get those people. What is it they always say? You got to get creative with your resume.
And even then, I think that's BS because when I was jobless for a while, I was looking at why I wasn't getting hired, and they were talking about updating resumes, getting rid of certain words, adding this. But then I read I don't know if it was like an internet post from a hiring manager, and he said the first thing I do in the morning is I walk into my office, I pick up half the stack of resumes, throw them in the trash. And then he says, I don't want to work with anybody who's not lucky.
Wow, I don't think I want to work with anybody that is just lucky. Because I mean, are we playing the lottery here, or are we actually working with people's lives? I mean, depending on what you do, and I guess it depends on what that hiring manager, what company that was for. And I'm not going to ask you to divulge that. Or not even what industry it was, but
it was just an internet post, so it could be true, could not be true.
I just think that's a very, because here's the thing, the right fit for that job, the most qualified, most experienced experienced individual for that job was probably sitting in that top of that stack.
Oh, I'd agree.
But then again, also, it depends on how those resumes come in. Because if they print them off in sequential order of reception, then probably the last few that were in that stack probably were the ones that didn't care about that job anyway. Because rumor has it, that normally a person is hired within the first few days of the posting of that job. Meaning that if a job was posted and it's been out there for 10 days, if you didn't jump in and get your resume in the first 3 days, you probably are not even in the running for that position.
You know what? I would even say that if you didn't know anybody in the company, you didn't have a fighting chance.
And there's that too, because it's always best to have somebody in the company that can speak or vouch for you. Because, but then again, I don't know. You take a company as large as the one I work for. I know several people in that company, and it still, it still wouldn't have helped anybody, because the chances of them reaching out and talking to me or talking to somebody who knew that person, but again, I think having a good networking, or networking structure within your job search is a good thing. But when did we get to a point where the interview became one of the last things you ever do? I mean, to be honest with you, I think as a hiring manager, the more people I interview, the better I become a hiring manager. Because it's experience, right?
Yeah.
And even them, a hiring manager, they need to learn how to look across the table at somebody and make a judgment call on this person by looking at what they send in on paper and what you're seeing in front of you. And I think I think industry-wide, we shortchange ourselves by removing, because apparently hiring managers just don't have time to do interviews. Well, I mean, what is
but that's their whole job, right?
Yeah, that's your existence. Your existence is to find the best qualified candidate. And maybe the best qualified candidate isn't the guy or girl or man or woman.
Person.
Oh, person. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
I'm not the hiring manager. I can be. Fuck that. It's the pant or the skirt that's across the table from you. Okay. And depending on the job, I mean, you don't want to hire Bubba from the local construction crew to wrap his legs around that pole, do you? You want Susie High School that just graduated, right? That just turned old enough, But
yeah,
that was on the cheerleading squad, of course.
Oh man.
But anyway, what I'm getting at though is I would say that getting somebody in a room and talking to them you find more out about them than what you see on paper or what you talk to their friend. Because the thing is that more than likely your best employee is going to be the employee that has the capability of being your best employee that you can develop into that employee that you need.
You teach him the systems as he's on the job.
Absolutely. You develop. Because here's the thing. Take project management. Anybody can sit out there and learn PMBOK, which is the Project Management Institute Book of Knowledge, okay? Now, that is how the Project Management Institute outlines how you should flow through an entire project from beginning to end, you know, from initiation to closeout, all right? But just because I could sit here and memorize PMBOK and understand how to apply PMBOK, that doesn't mean I know how to apply it to your industry.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to learn. Just because I know PMBOK, just because I have this certification that says, you know, that I'm a project management professional, does not mean that I can function in your world.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, yeah, it's just bad. Like, I'm currently always looking for the better job. I know you're kind of in the same boat, but it's like, who do we know? What doors can we get into? And it's a daunting task, because, like, you know, like you said, I could be the best employee at something. I just need the opportunity.
This is the way I look at the world. I look at every problem as an opportunity, not a problem. Trying to find that right employee is not a problem of a shortfall in employment, meaning that we are missing somebody. I see it as an opportunity to find someone.
Do you think maybe some of this hiring problems come from the fact that people are looking for that instant gratification as opposed to developing somebody?
I would say that ROI, or return on investment, is always at the forefront of a hiring manager's priorities. Of course, I mean, the last thing you want to do is offer an individual a decent, you know, salary, or a $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 salary all the way into the six figures, and find out that they are not a worthy investment. So I think ROI is always something that a hiring manager has to look at, because, you know, money is what makes capitalism run, and this entire economy is based on capitalism. So, but I think it's how you view ROI. Yes, the instant gratification, I think, is a hindrance if you set your gratification too soon. Meaning that, okay, so your gratification or your return on investment should not be, it's my first time, and, you know, she's so hot. You know, it shouldn't be that. It should definitely be, I want to invest in this. I want to know who she is. I want her to know who I am, and I want to explore everything that is her, not just that instant gratification. Because I think the reason I put it in that context is I think we can all understand that. I think there are some of us that are out there that are just ready to play the field and move on from conquest to conquest. But even those individuals that go conquest to conquest eventually come to a point in their life where they're no longer about just the conquest. Now they want total, absolute conquest. They don't just want to go from village to village. Does that make sense?
Kinda. I think you took it on a different tangent than I think we were aiming for.
Well, what I mean is that, going back to when you're hiring somebody, you don't hire somebody for the here and now. You hire them for the hereafter. Meaning that if I'm a hiring manager, I look across at you. You know what? Let me back up for a minute. When I was an instructor, I used to ask the new hires. One of the first things I would ask them is, I'd ask them, you know, go around the room. We're going to do a little round the room, round robin thing. And you're going to give us your name. You're going to give us what brought you to the company, what location you work at, and then why you chose this company. And the last thing I'd ask him, I said, what's your 5-year plan? All right, where do you see yourself with this company in 5 years? And then I would start out with myself. I would tell them who I was, where I even told them, and I always would ask if they served in the military, and if so, what branch, and so forth. Because obviously being a former U.S. Marine, I highly...
You have a bias, would you say?
Well, I would say not so much a bias. I think a camaraderie. And it's always easier for one veteran to talk to another veteran. Much easier. But I guess if you want to use the term bias, I think I do favor veterans over non-veterans a little bit but it's because of the shared experience.
But if you were interviewing somebody and the candidate that wasn't a veteran was a better fit, would you still hire the veteran?
No.
Well, and I think that's where the problem lies, that the bias in the hiring managers or anybody who's doing the hiring, they have a bias and they go straight for it.
But at the same time, if I'm not going to hire the veteran, I'm going to do something that most jobs won't do. I'm going to tell the veteran why. I'll reach out to the veteran and say, hey, this is why.
Would you do that with a non-veteran?
No, probably not. I probably should, but I'm really not. I'm guessing as a hiring manager, you're not supposed to reach out to any of them. But
true. The jobs that I've applied for, I've had interviews. They don't even get back to me for whatever reason. Like, it's a negative or a positive. Oh, you didn't get hired or you're hired. I don't hear anything from them. And back when, like, say, our parents were hunting for jobs, even when they didn't get the job, the hiring manager would turn around, write a letter, or call them and say you didn't get the job.
Yeah.
I would like just that little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Response.
Or respect.
I think it's a respect thing because, often it leaves you wondering why. Why didn't I get this? What did I do wrong? And maybe it's not that you did anything wrong.
Or maybe it's just they had a candidate in mind already.
And that happens too. I see where I work, I've put in probably more than 21 applications to other positions, and I have yet to get an interview. Now, I have a bachelor's degree, as mentioned in the original inaugural podcast. I've got some I would say a pretty good wealth of experience just in life itself. Always been really pretty consistent on jobs, but can't even land an interview. Now, I will say that it's probably because they usually had a candidate already in mind before the job even went out there, and they just put it out there just for, I guess, fairness sake or whatever.
They have to go through the motions.
Yeah. And
I would kind of think that if you're just going through the motions, because it's probably some regulation or something has to be put out there, but
equal opportunity or something.
Yeah, but it's at the same point. It's like, if you already have somebody in mind, why even post the job?
Well, here's the thing: if you're going to post it out there and people actually apply to it, respond back to them and say, "We've decided to go ahead with this candidate," and then maybe even list off some things that we liked about you and some things we don't like about you. That way. Yeah. Because here's the thing is I think, and if you're out there, companies, you might want to hear this part, is that when you don't respond to a candidate, you leave that candidate with one of two feelings about your organization. Either they feel that you don't respect them enough to give them the time of day to tell them why they did not get the position, or they just don't care.
Well, I'll play devil's advocate for a second. Let's say hiring director, and we're working or looking to hire a telecom position at a telecom company, and they could say, "Well, I have 10,000 applicants for that. You expect me to get back to every single one?"
I wouldn't say every single one, but definitely, are you going to call 10,000 people in for an interview?
No, you're going to look through the stack of 10,000 and probably find, well, I mean, depending on the job, I guess, the top 10. Okay, but so, did they even look at the whole stack of 10,000?
Well, a lot of companies nowadays use an algorithm because nowadays you don't even send in a paper resume anymore. You log on to their website and you go through their little career portal that they have.
And you know what pisses me off about that? You upload your resume, and then the next page is what's your name, your work experience. It's like
I just all over again.
Yeah, it's like I just uploaded it.
Yeah, what was the point of me uploading this? Then, right?
I know, right?
But even after you do that, though, they have an algorithm that filters out candidates that just don't even meet basic requirements. So let's just say, okay, if I'm a hiring manager and you're saying 10,000 applicants. Okay, no, we're going to go with the 10,000 number. I like it. It's an even number. It's a big even number, but it's nonetheless, it's an even number.
It's huge.
It's huge, he said. And so, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here and I'm going to whittle that down to 100. Because I can interview 100 people. Depending on my time frame, I can at least interview 100 people. So I'm going to get it down to 100 interviews. Now, I'm going to then go through those interviews, and I'm going to whittle it down to about 25 that I'm going to call back in for a second interview. Now, those 75 that are not going to get a second interview, I'm going to send them a somewhat standardized response. I'm not going to get too specific, but I'm going to say, I'd like to thank you for applying. You definitely had some of the basic requirements that we were looking for, but unfortunately, we had so many more candidates that.
I think I've seen this form letter. It's it's a competitive position. So many people have applied, and we have decided to move on with a different candidate.
And then out of those 25, that means I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write 24 specific emails.
Well, you're already, I think, a better hiring manager than 90% of the people out there.
Well, I think you have to sit here and stop and think, while you may not be the best candidate for us, you may very well be the best candidate in the future. If you're not, if I'm not doing something to help you be a better you, then I'm not helping you help the company that I work for, because you may very well be the next person that I hire in a different position next month.
True.
But I need you to keep a positive outlook on the company that I work for, because otherwise you may not reapply for something else, or maybe even apply for the same position if another opening opens for that position. You might have been my number 2 guy that I had to let go, but that I couldn't hire.
I guess on the same side of that token, right, we're talking about people who don't have the experience, but can somebody be overqualified per position?
I think you can be overqualified, but here's what I look at. Okay, so you're overqualified. We're going to talk about that. In the interview, we're going to bring this up, and I'm going to say, I'm going to be brass tacks. I'm going to say, you got to be honest. Between you and me, you and I both know you're overqualified for this position. So I'm going to ask you, why do you want this position? Is this simply so you can get your foot in the door and hopefully open up opportunities within the company? Which, if you're not stupid, you're going to say that's exactly the approach I'm going for. If you are stupid, you're going to give me another response.
But what if the response is, well, I need a job, and I've applied because I'm willing to work for you.
Okay, well then what you do is you lie to me. You sit there and say, I understand that I probably have a skill set that is beyond the bounds or limitations of this position, but because I admire the company and the direction this company is headed towards, I am willing to take this position in an effort to earn another position in the future.
I don't know, but lying to you, that kind of seems disingenuous, right? If you found out they lied to you in the interview,
Well, let me ask you this. In lying to me, Are you going to do a crappy job in the job you just got hired for?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I'm not that type of employee, but there might be some people who are doing that.
Well, what I'm getting at is if you're overqualified, are you going to be a crappy employee? Most likely you're not. I mean, overqualified individuals tend to obviously, I guess.
If you're overqualified, you're putting in the effort.
So chances are I'm going to get the better of you before you get the better of me.
I have been on the receiving end of that, and they're just telling me you're overqualified, and I have taken that same approach, and I have lied, saying, "Oh, it's a foot into the company, and I'm going to strive higher."
Well, then I would say that hiring manager did not know how. Well, you know what? To be honest with you, I can't really speak on what somebody else was thinking in that interview, but I would say that they missed out on an opportunity because if somebody comes to me with a skill set that is beyond this position, I mean, it really depends though.
I mean,
how many jobs? You know, I'm gonna have to look at numerous factors. When I look at your resume, how many jobs have you had, and what was the life expectancy of those jobs? What was the shelf life? I mean, are you the kind of person that jumps from job to job every three to 4 years?
If you look at my resume, I am like a rat. I'm not like a rat on a sinking ship. I'm the captain. I'm going down with the ship.
Well, that's the thing is you have to stop and ask yourself. I mean, is this going to be the kind of employee that is going to jump ship the first sign of trouble? And am I going to waste my time even bringing this person on board? And so the overqualified. I mean,
can you be too loyal to a company?
Yes.
And do you see that as a detriment if you're looking at somebody's resume? I mean, again, I know you're not a hiring manager, but
I think you're you may be a detriment to yourself, but I mean, loyalty is always a good thing. It's just where does that loyalty really get placed? Is it with the company or is it with certain individuals? Meaning that, and I've made this mistake before too, that I was too loyal to a supervisor when in fact it was that supervisor that was literally sinking my own ship. So I think loyalty is a good thing. I think if I'm looking at, let's say you came to me with your application and you've got the basic qualifications and you're probably, you know, let's take a look at it degree wise and maybe even a little experience. And you know what, let's take the experience away. Degree wise, you're definitely overqualified. I mean, mostly 90% of my guys that have this position now that are here only have a bachelor's degree. Well, you have a master's. Now they've got 2 or 3 years experience. You've got 1. So they got a little bit more experience than you, but you've got this master's degree, and master's degrees tend to be the next. They're like the bachelor's degree 30 years ago. When people had BAs, man, it was like, wow, you got a BA, here's a job.
Yeah. So a degree doesn't necessarily guarantee you a job anymore.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, I've got a degree.
I've got 2,
and yet we're working jobs that are
below. Yeah, not knocking the companies that we work for, but are below us.
Absolutely not. I mean, obviously, we choose to work for the organizations and companies that we do, but go back 20 years ago, you would not see anybody in our position with a degree of any kind. It was definitely we both technically probably. I mean, I work a true blue collar job. You work a lower in white collar, I would say.
Well, that's professorship, but I have a second job where I'm spackling walls.
You have 2 jobs. So that, you've got that low end white collar, if you really think about it, and then more like mailroom position, really. I mean, if you really, that's not fair because I don't want to say that about adjunct professors because, I would say it's probably just the lower of the white collar in academia.
Oh, but then I also have a blue collar job at another university.
Well, that's what I was getting at, and then you also have the blue collar job. So, but I mean, clearly, I would say that both of us are probably overqualified at what they do. I think it's funny too that you mentioned that because I was actually talking to my boss's boss one day. I was working on a project, and I was actually helping him develops a formalized form, I guess, if you want to call it
A formalized form.
that. Yeah. Because apparently he doesn't know how to use Adobe Pro, apparently. But he's my boss's boss, so he anyway. But I was helping them put a form together to help analyze how individuals out in the field with communication with customers were doing. Anyway, the form wasn't important, but there was this conversation, a brief conversation we had where I had made I can't remember how we got onto it, but in the exchange, I had told him that I said, well, to be honest with you, I really feel underutilized in this position with the company. And he looks at me and goes, well, don't you think everybody feels underutilized? And I looked at him and said, have you seen the technicians we work with?
Ooh. Is that a negative dig, or is that just a?
It's an observation, meaning that, to be honest with you, majority of my colleagues are very good people. They strive to take care of customers. They definitely put the customers first. And the thing is though, there's a large number of them that are content with the position they have now. Now me, I am what one would call a true champion of change. I don't want to hear about change and then there not really be change.
Yeah,
change.
I mean that's why you've put in what you said, 21 different applications for positions higher up in the company.
Mm-hmm. And it's not that I'm looking to abandon ship in the organization I'm in. It's that I want to see different parts of the company. I mean, it's a massive company. We have organizations that span across different types of technology, and it's something that I just want to.
So you're that second candidate you're talking about, that we hire you and you have that potential, but it's almost kind of like the companies are abandoning you or leaving you out to dry because they don't want to elevate your position.
I think it's I'm one of those employees that fall victim to the underdevelopment, meaning that I have all this bottled up potential, and I look for ways to exploit that and release that pressure and actually develop into something more. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, like in your case, I mean, we're just gonna, I guess, speak in the abstract. Have you seen where the company could do better, and you have taken that information to higher ups, and they ignore you?
Oh, absolutely.
So how does that make you feel when that happens?
Well, when I see that instance itself happen, I often, I think the first reaction, and I think anybody's first reaction would be that they feel a little hurt, belittled, or swept aside. Like, oh, well, I mean, you're just one cog in a huge machine. Your opinion really doesn't matter. Now, a lot of times, and oftentimes, I will hear the whole, oh, well, we don't want to just hear you bitch. We want solutions. Well, I'm giving you solutions. Well, no, but that solution's not realistic or practical. Wait a minute. Okay, wait, hold on. For instance, we'll take a hot button issue with our organization right now. Is we have survey results that come in, and now, granted, the surveys are not set up to be intentionally sabotaging to employees, and we're not the only organization that use these surveys. But there is.
I'm pretty sure people have gotten that phone call the day after they've had a service, whether it's oil changes or installations of cable or stuff like that.
I think one of the things that infuriates guys in my field is that when these surveys, we get what was called a negative survey, but in the comment section, it's like a raving review. I mean, it's like, this person was great.
But you get a 1 instead of a 5.
Yeah, because, like ours, some are scales of 1 to 10, depending. I mean, like you look at Yeah, EP. What is it? NPS surveys, which is the Net Promoter Score, which is a 1 to 10, 8 being a neutral, 9 being good, 9 being a promoter, 10 being promoter. Well, in our case, we've whittled it down to where it's 1 through 5. And yeah, exactly. If somebody accidentally puts a 1, you know, it's this is a problem I see fundamentally, though, is that if I'm sitting here and I'm the guy that's looking at surveys, all right, and let me take myself back to my political science days, where where I basically am more of a statistician than anything.
Well, don't you have a published paper about something about that?
Yeah, we did I co-authored a paper on variation in ballot design, and what we had to do is we looked at a lot of numbers, and coding and so forth. But from a statistician's point of view, is when I look at a survey, I look at a guy and I say, okay, this guy's got 99 great surveys and he's got 1 bad one. Okay, stick it over there. If he gets more, we'll take a look. But we'll take a look at this nonetheless. We'll see what they said in the comments. But and then if I'm looking at the comments and I'm saying, all right, well, they gave this guy a 1. We needed him to have a 5. That's perfect. But he got a 1. But the customer then turned around in the comments and took the time. This is what I don't understand. Took the time to say that, Joe Public was the best technician I've ever had out here. He found my problem in less than 20 minutes, and he had it fixed in less than 5. I swear to God, greatest person I've ever had out here. Okay? Now, does that 1 mean anything to me anymore? No.
No, if I'm looking at it, then no, because the comment completely outweighs that number, that 1.
And that's the fundamental problem is that still that 1 survey is going to hurt that guy.
And they don't follow up and re-interview when it's a flip-flop like that, or resend a survey?
They do. And the thing is it comes down to leadership. And it's a fundamental flaw in leadership that, the numbers have to be perfect because the comments, I can't track the comments, but I can track a number. Well, yeah, but here's the thing. Stop and take a look at that survey, because here's the thing. When you take a survey, whether it's via text or on the phone, it takes longer to leave a comment than it does to hit 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, which means that customer took more time to tell us that this guy was great than they did for them to hit that 1 or that 5.
Well, in my industry, I say industry, but in my field, how about that? There are surveys at the end of the year, semester, for my performance in class. How did I perform? And you know how they grade the surveys? They don't care about the numbers. They care about the comments.
Well, see, it's funny that you say that, because when I was an instructor, we had surveys too. And while the numbers did matter, whether they gave us a 1 or a 10, because they used the Net Promoter Score for that. But we also looked at the comments. And and I remember at the end of class, when I would sit there and say, I'd be like, all right, we're going to do the survey in a few minutes. And here's what I want you to do. I want you, when you take this survey, because I'm going to step out of here, but you guys are going to do it on your iPads anyway. But I want you to be honest, because I can't learn anything from you if you don't tell it.
That's the same thing I tell my students.
It's
because I don't know about your field, but as an instructor, in academia, not belittling your instructor status, is really whatever is they take the.
My foot keeps sliding down here.
Oh, okay, yeah. Is they take the first 5 that are negative, throw them away. Take the first 5 that are 10 and throw those away, and then and in my case, I don't think it's that many because I don't have that many students.
Okay, but, so what you're pointing out is they remove the outliers.
Yes,
they take your highest and your worst, and they throw them out, and then they take a median from there.
Yeah, but they take a sampling of all the comments,
and that's how you're supposed to do it, because when it comes to the net promoter, you need to kick those highest ones out. And you got to pick. I mean, if you've got 10 students, then what you want to do is you want to grab 2 and 2. You want to grab the 2 worst and 2 best, kick them out, take those 6 that were in there, get you a median on the number, but then you want to take all 10 comments and see what it is. Because we could review our surveys and we could read our comments. And
well, doesn't that seem to be a little biased, I guess, towards the white-collar worker? Because we have just diagnosed that when we're instructing, the best and worst are thrown out and we take the median. But when you're working the blue-collar position, they lean on the numbers and don't care about the comments.
Well, but you have to stop and think about it for a minute. Are there more blue-collar workers than there are white-collar?
Oh, you bet.
So it's much easier to calculate numbers than to calculate comments, isn't it?
Yeah, but then we're in your situation.
And that, again, I would agree. And I look at it from both perspectives, though. When I get a survey, I'll look at the comments and I'll be like, cool. This is what I got to do better. If it's a bad survey, if it's a genuinely bad survey, this is what I need to work on. But you know what? Going on over 4 years with the company, you know how many bad surveys I've taken?
5. Oh, 1.
1 survey.
And that affects you the most. Not the good ones, that one bad one.
Actually, to be honest with you, it's really funny is because they knew better than to, I guess, point out the bad one with me, because they're like, oh yeah, look at this. This is stupid. This is the dumbest survey we've ever seen. So first off, then I've actually taken technically 2 bad surveys.
Oh.
Okay. One was what we call a neutral. And the only reason it was a neutral is because the customer, I think, gave me a 3. But here's the funny thing about that survey is I went out there for a repair on her services that had nothing to do with her services. Like, her services were all good. Her internet worked, whistling, fine, perfect. It was something in her backyard that was dealing with our facilities, telecom firm. Okay. Now, again, and I get the survey, and this is not anything negative against the company that I work for. I understand what they're trying to do, and but the funny thing is they didn't care about that neutral. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, we get this. The negative one was that, and this is where I think companies, when it comes to surveys, have a, if you have customers that do not speak English, and I'm talking about across the board, Vietnamese to
Russian to whatever,
to French to whatever, okay, guess what? Send the survey in a language they understand. Because this customer was sent, it was a Spanish-speaking customer. That's not, this is just factual. In the comments, the words excellent were used. Like I obviously in college I failed Spanish, so I had to get a waiver to graduate, by the way. I didn't ask for that waiver, but
well, I mean, it almost sounds like they themselves use Google Translate.
Yeah. But the funny thing is the negative was only a 1, because in some cultures, number 1 is best.
Oh, because you're number 1. I
was number 1. All right. He wasn't rating me a 5 like I was the 5th best technician he's ever seen. So 1, and and that's, again, this is a learning curve.
Well, and then the other thing, I mean, I don't want to point fingers at the company, but maybe they translated the question wrong. Because, I mean, do they send it out in the language, or is it all in English?
All in English.
Okay, well, maybe he put it through Google Translate, and maybe it messed up. Do you think that's a possibility?
Maybe he didn't even read the question at all.
He just clicked 1.
He saw a scale 1 to 5. Well, he's the best technician. He's number 1. I mean, I don't know, and that's the thing is even with the comments, and you can't look at the comments, and I think that's why when we looked at as even an instructor, you got to take a holistic approach. You have to look at everything, and at the same time, are you going to hold one bad survey against a employee when that employee's probably had 99 other surveys that were great?
It almost sounds like in your situation they are 21 applications for higher up in the company, one negative review, and no movement.
I mean, I guess it is what it is. I think, again, it comes down to how well do you want to develop your people. You know what? Let me ask you a question.
All right.
Okay, you're a professor, so this may not really apply to your. Well, it should apply actually. I think it applies.
I don't just ask the question. Let's see.
What is the most important resource any organization can have?
The most important. Well, I would almost say that it's the employees that work for them.
Human capital. You're right. No,
would say
yeah, human capital. Now, what's the best way to improve your human capital? Utilize them.
I don't know. I have different ideas, but what's the?
Focus on their strengths, develop their weaknesses. Hence, develop your employees. If you don't develop your employees, what happens when you develop an employee?
They get better.
What else?
The attitude towards the company gets better.
Loyalty.
Yeah.
You increase loyalty towards the organization, the company they work for, and then you get the better out of them. It's that simple.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds simple, but unfortunately, I don't think companies are doing that.
Well, and like I said, this always comes kind of right back to where we started with this whole thing is that, while experience is a great thing, what you should be looking for is those employees that, having the experience is a plus, but what you want to look for is those employees that you can develop into your next star. Because here's the thing. Take pro football. Has the best quarterback that's been drafted been the best quarterback for the NFL?
No, because the quarterbacks in NCAA, they run that, what is it, West Coast offense, gunslinger style.
Well, okay, so let me get really to the point. As much as did Tom Brady go first round?
I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the draft stats, but I don't like Tom Brady.
Well, that's not okay. You know what? Did Troy Aikman go first round?
I think Troy might have. Now, what you should be asking is, where did Dak go?
Dak was like fourth round. You know what? Hold on. Let's take a quick look real quick.
All right. So we're doing the Jeopardy here. He's typing.
I'm going to say he did not go first round.
I'm not sure. It's been too many scotches ago. I couldn't be correct in this. Tom Brady's draft position.
Let's see, because we never really looked for that. Let's see. Season Brady was selected with the pick of number 199, a compensatory pick in the 6th round. So now let me go back to what I was saying. So Tom Brady, one of the most decorated
cheating quarterbacks.
Okay.
I have bias.
I understand that, but he's got more Super Bowl rings than you do.
Bastard.
Either way, what I'm getting at is that, and you could probably you know what? Let's look with Troy Aikman. So we know that Tom Brady was in the 6th round, right? So Troy Aikman draft position. I can't even spell draft. Wow, because I'm drinking scotch, not beer.
Too much scotch. So what do we got?
NFL draft.
Really? Troy Aikman's position's not popping up?
Yeah, that was kind of weird. Here, that's why.
Oh. And do.
Alright, it's going to make me actually do.
Are we going to get pulled for that? Because I just hummed out the Jeopardy tune?
I don't know. Okay, so he was the first pick.
Okay.
So he was a first pick, okay?
Now, what you could say about Troy Aikman is that, yes, he might have been the best fit for the Cowboys, but his experience level in the first season.
Exactly, because it was a losing season, right?
15-1?
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, it was pretty abysmal. But here's the thing, though, is
both of those quarterbacks, barring Troy Aikman's first pick there, is that, yes, in their first couple years in the NFL, they were garbage.
Well, here's the thing, though. It's just Troy Aikman went first round. So he was the best player out of UCLA, all right? He went first round. So as far as the NFL and the Cowboys were concerned at the time, he had the best skill set and experience, whereas Tom Brady went the 6th round and was a backup to Drew Bledsoe.
And it was a compensatory pick.
Yes, exactly. Now, Tom Brady was developed under
Belichick,
under Belichick, and under Drew Bledsoe, who was a pretty good quarterback. Just, I guess, never really came into his own, but still a good quarterback. But Tom Brady was developed within a system, and he stayed there, and he created loyalty. And then he continued to play well for that organization and still plays well for the organization, even though, thank God, he lost to the Philadelphia Eagles in the last Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Now, you take Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman developed under Jimmy Johnson, but he didn't have to develop so much. But he still had to develop. But he had a skill set and he had experience playing for UCLA. Meaning that while these are two great quarterbacks, one's got more Super Bowl rings than the other. Why? Because one was further developed than the other.
Yeah.
And Troy Aikman was in, 89? And, well, that's a pretty good difference, though.
And then Brady was like, what, mid-9 to 2000?
2000 season.
Oh, wow.
So he was drafted 10 years later. Well, 9 years later, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, 11 years? 11 years? Yeah, 11.
I don't know. We can't math. It's all right.
Yeah, we can't math. After this much gods, we can't math. But the point of what I'm getting at is that while hiring managers and companies, it's okay to focus on experience. Remember that in any experience any employee has, you're going to have to develop them within your own company. So sometimes I would say it's better to sacrifice experience for the potential to develop further.
Oh, I agree. As somebody who's been on a job hunt for a very long time. I wish it was that simple as the football analogy.
Well, but here's the thing is nobody really understood and knew what they were getting when they drafted those players. Take a look at Reggie Bush. Everybody thought Reggie Bush was going to be the next Emmitt Smith. Who's Reggie Bush?
Yeah, he still plays, but yeah, who's Reggie Bush?
Who's Reggie Bush? He was great for USC.
Or
Matt Leinart.
I hate to bring this up. Or the great Vince Young for UT.
Yeah,
great college player.
Yeah,
got
but
to the pros.
He couldn't even read a sentence out of Dr. Seuss. Come on now. I think he had cue cards in front of him when he was reading out his name at the fucking.
No, that's the dude from the program, the movie.
Alvin.
Alvin, yeah.
Did you see that? It says Adidas.
I taught him that. Yeah. And what did he say? I don't need to know how to read. I just need to know how to sign an NFL contract. Yeah. So what do you think potential employee, I can't even think of the word.
Candidate?
Yes. What do you think they should do to maybe set themselves out for a hiring director? Because, isn't that the biggest issue is you have to make yourself stand out because there are so many people now?
Well, obviously you need to be able to bypass the filters. And I'm not saying lie. I don't even want to use the term embellish on your resume. Just sit there and understand that if you were hiring for this position, what kind of verbiage would you want to see in a resume? Do you want it short and sweet? Or do the resumes need to be shorter now? I mean, are we talking? I mean, 2 pages is like the max now.
Yeah.
There are people.
The max. Well, it also depends on the where you're working. Because as a professor, I have to give them a CV, which is the long form resume, and they need to know everything that I have done. So, I mean,
And the question, and here's the other thing is so let's say you want to be a project manager. Okay, that's where you fall in things, and you have project management experience at this one job, but then you went and did this job, and this job. So there's like maybe 2, maybe 3, or even maybe 1 job between that career or that job versus the one you're trying to go after now. Do you leave that one off because it's just so far down and there's so much, or do you take the ones that were non-project management associated and remove those, but then now you have a gap in your employment?
Yeah. Which is bad in every hiring interview. Yeah, well, why is there a gap in your employment?
I mean, I guess you could always just do a quick brief synopsis of where you did,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really hard. I mean, at this point now, it's almost like you have to get a job hunting professional or
headhunter.
Or a headhunter.
I mean, companies have that to help you. Well, maybe not companies, but there are companies built on helping you find a job.
Remember that a headhunter is usually hired by a company to find a candidate.
Yeah.
So they're looking out for the company's interest, not yours. So a headhunter, I would say, is probably not your best route, but definitely a career advisor, maybe resume builders, I don't know about Monster, unless you want to pay.
I mean, LinkedIn's a great one now, but you still fall into that trap of what do you put on the resume, what do you not?
Hey, what do you put? Oh, excuse me. And the other thing you have to think is which is more important? Do you have your LinkedIn that looks as professional as ever, and then your resume try to match LinkedIn?
That is the interesting point, is it not? Yeah. But doesn't LinkedIn lead to that instant gratification that the job manager doesn't, or hiring manager doesn't have to look very hard anymore? He can just scroll through LinkedIn.
I don't know if I want to work for anybody that wants instant gratification, understanding that instant results is.
But could that be a shift with the younger hiring managers now because they are set up for instant gratification and getting the best thing first?
Well, I got to say that the employment or the job world itself is not an application on your iPhone. You really should not be expecting instant results because, one, math takes time. Any math worth doing takes time, okay? Yeah. We didn't launch the Saturn V rocket into space by fucking spending 15 minutes of doing trigonometry. Okay.
Or to update it, Elon Musk didn't send his heavy Falcon rocket into space in 15 minutes either.
No, he didn't. He spent the last, 15, 20 years working on that?
I don't know if it's that long, but he's been doing it quite a while.
He's SpaceX, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think space has been around since about 2012, haven't they?
We'd have to Google that, but possibly.
But, I think when it comes to employment and experience, I think really honestly it's how well you can verbalize your experience to align with the company which you're trying to get a job with. So I think what you really need to do is you need to research the company a little bit, whoever you're trying to work for. If you can find people, now that's one great thing about LinkedIn is that you can actually look up people who work in those companies and maybe connect with them and start networking.
Oh, well, then there we go back to that catch-22 again. It's who you know, not what you know.
Well, it never hurts to get inside information. I mean, the only person
unless it's the stock market.
I was gonna say the only person that ever really got hurt by insider information was Martha Stewart, and even look at her. She can now get away with yanking Jack's nose off on live TV, and everybody just sees it as a commercial.
Well, that's because she's friends with Snoop Dogg.
There you go. I'm telling you, right? She's been to the big house now, so
she has street cred, right?
Yeah, street cred. But
all right.
I think if you really need, hiring questions to be answered, you probably need to seek out some of those
hiring directors, maybe
hiring professionals. Definitely.
Yeah.
I wish we had some good
somebody that could call in and talk to us or be here to interview.
Yeah, if anybody's got some good
centrally
leads on.
Well, we got centrallybiased@gmail.com. That's our email, and you can shoot us a tweet at centrally biased, or is it at just centrally biased? I don't know. I don't know how to use Twitter.
You can even look us up on Facebook and send us a message that way, because we've got a centrally biased page.
If you're a hiring director who'd like to come on the show and let us ask you some questions and see what potential employees could do to make themselves stand out.
Yeah, because we definitely want to enlighten and provide as much information and accurate information, so that.
Well, seeing as how we don't have a hiring director here, and we're only speculating at this point. What do you think advice we could possibly give to help people stand out, or help give them the power back, so that hiring directors, hiring managers don't hold all the power? Or is that even something that we can even answer?
Well, let's look at it from a different angle. Hey, if we got some hiring managers out there that want to pass some information our way, that would be greatly appreciated, because what we really want to do is help you find the right people to help you and your company be better, because while we're helping them, remember, they're helping you, and we're all in this together. So the only way that this great capitalistic experience moves forward is if we all work together and find the right people for the right jobs. So if you're a career advisor, if you're a hiring manager, or if you're a candidate that that's out there that has had some really good job hunting experience, by all means, send us what you think your way for our next segment, and we'll definitely include it.
All right, so we've been talking serious now for almost an hour, I think.
Oh yeah, wow, crazy.
All right, so we have crazy stories. Let's just tell a fun story, something that me and you have been through that's just, maybe a funny experience, or just a good story. We have so many. Do we have anything that might pertain to this, or?
I don't know about job hunting. How about hunting for a truck after a night on New Year's Eve?
Oh, good Lord! Oh man,
I don't even remember what year that was, but we were so intoxicated we shouldn't have been driving. By the way. By the way, don't drink and drive.
Oh, that's bad. That's very bad. Yeah, we couldn't find the truck,
and we were standing right next to it.
But to be fair, you did get a new truck.
Well, yes, that's. I think that's our one saving grace in that whole event or circumstance, was that it was not the same truck we were used to riding in, but still, we were standing right next to it.
We even lost it once at the American Airlines Center.
Yeah, it was.
I think it's just because we were looking for the wrong truck.
Yeah. Well, was that the Kid Rock concert?
No, it was a hockey game. Your dad got you platinum box.
Oh yeah, that's right. We got the platinum seats. Yeah, that's right.
We're not gonna go into too much detail because we don't need to incriminate ourselves. You just need to know that we have done some pretty stupid stuff. We still heard that.
Well, I guess it's time to put the cork back on this one, and we'll see y'all next round.